Okay, so welcome back to the afternoon session today. This is the last session on 21 centimeter cosmology that will be delivered by Professor Suman Majumdar once again. So before I hand it over to Suman, let me just tell you there will be a couple of announcements at the end of this session. So please be there till the end of this session because those announcements will be really important for the rest of the program as well as for other nitty-gritty of the formalities, so to say. Okay, so over to you, Suman. We do hope this will be another exciting hands-on session.
Thank you very much, Shubhratik. Okay, so let us start. So somebody was at the end of the previous session was saying that they were having problems and you were getting some sort of segmentation fault, right? So let us start with this. We are in this in-body directory inside. So I think I can do the same things again. I can make the in-body program. So basically it will compile the main in-body program with the assistance of all the other subsidiary programs which are being used within it. And all necessary packages are actually installed. As you can see, the path is given here in this shared workshop directory. So you should be able to do the compilation without any error. If you do not edit the compilation file or the make file, it should compile without any error. So the next thing we did where we should change the input parameters. So the input parameters are, so if I do ls, input parameters are given in this input.inbody_comp file. So if I just, without opening it, if I do more, so you will see that I have changed only one thing, that is the redshift at which I am generating the in-body output, right? I have changed it to redshift 8 and I'm generating only one redshift snapshots, that is a single output at a single redshift. So that's why that number is formed. So now with this setting, if I run the in-body, so those who were having problem in running the in-body, if I run it, it should produce an output file which will contain the dark matter particle position and velocity, which we will use as an input to the next step, that is in identification of halos. So it takes some 2 minutes 40 seconds. So let us wait until then to run. And if you face any issues up to this stage, please let me know. Now, this is the time to speak up.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, it is saying permission denied.
What? Permission denied?
Yeah. After ./nbody_comp.
But did the make happen? Make in-body_comp, did it work?
Oh no, I didn't.
You didn't even do that? Though if you do not compile it, then it will not work.
Okay.
You have to compile it first. First, as I mentioned, you have to do this. See what I did here. Oh, that is basically cleaned up right now. Right. So basically what you have to do, make space in-body_comp. Do that first. When the prompt comes back, then you should do this ./in-body_comp. Because it will create the make file, actually make command will compile the program and create an executable to which you will have basically permission to run. Because right now the directory contains an executable to which I only have the permission to run, but because I compiled it in my account, you don't have. So you have to compile it first. So I think Yeah, my prompt came back. So did you manage to compile? Whoever was having problem, sorry, I
Yes, sir.
cannot. Yeah, did you manage to compile? And
Yeah.
now is it running?
Yeah. Now
Okay,
N-body
fine.
is running.
Okay, fine. So let it finish. By the time you should note what I am doing here. So once the run is complete, it will tell you how much time it took. So in this case, it took 2 minutes 25 seconds, and there should be an output file. So I have this output file, output.nbody underscore 8. 8 is the redshift at which this snapshot was created. So that would be the output file that will be produced in the same directory. Okay, what I am going to do next, and this is the important part, this is why you are getting that segmentation fault. You will move this output file, mv is move, then the output file name, then one level up in directory structure, and you have the FOF directory. So if you just type double dot slash and type F and then press tab, it will automatically pick up the directory one level above, the FOF directory one level above, and then put a dot again. So you will now move this output.nbody underscore 8 file to this particular directory because my FOF program is there.
Sir, are you running the program from the first? Or
Yes, I am
where
running it from the beginning. Because somebody said they didn't manage to follow, that's why.
yes, sir, but when I run the nbody.com, oh, it's still running.
It is
So
not finished
yeah.
because you started running it late.
Yeah.
It will take 2 minutes 25 seconds roughly with the same configuration.
More 52%. So after that, it will take some time.
Sorry, can you repeat, please?
Sir, after I command more input, that command compile. So it says more 52%.
I didn't get it. What you said. Sorry. Okay, somebody is
Yes,
saying
sir, it has
something in the chat.
completed. It took 1 minute 57 seconds.
Okay, fine. So someone said, okay, I have fixed it. Okay. So now once the run is complete, you should type ls to see if there is any output dot nbody underscore the redshift value, this kind of file.
Yes, sir.
So
Output.nbody.
yeah, then move that file using move command, mv file name double dot slash fof hello finder slash dot. So while putting double dot slash fof hello finder, just type f, it will automatically take. So double dot slash f and then press tab, it will automatically take the folder name or the directory name.
Sir, you told us to change the 8.5 to 8. So
You may or may not change, it's up to you. And okay, so the other file that you have to move, if you have changed it to, or just to make sure that both the input files are same, identical, because nbody and FOF should use identical input file. So you can copy the input file from your nbody directory. So copy command is cp input.nbody underscore comp, and again copy it to the same directory. So it will overwrite the existing input.nbody file. Okay. In the FOF directory. So you have to first move the nbody output that was produced and then copy the input file for the nbody code to this FOF directory. So both has to be placed in the FOF directory. Now I will move to the FOF directory. So cd double dot slash FOF hello finder, then dot. So I will move, see my current path has changed. Earlier it was nbody, now it is FOF hello finder. Okay. So here also I will do the same thing. Again, I have to compile FOF underscore main, make FOF underscore main. I have to compile it. Right. And I can also cross check whether the output files have been moved here. So output file output dot nbody underscore 8.000 that has been moved here, right? And now I will run my FOF main program here. So it will automatically take the existing input dot nbody file as its input here. So that's why I made sure that both the input files are same, so that the redshift remains same, that input redshift remains same. That's why I copied the input file from nbody folder to the FOF folder. The structures are identical in both cases. So I can run it here now, FOF underscore main, and it will tell me which redshift it is running for. It is running for redshift 8, see. 8.0 it says, and then nbody output, and it gives some other flags. It will take some time, and yeah, it took 18 seconds to run. So now after this run is complete, there should be a hello catalog file at redshift 8. So see, there is one, hello catalog underscore 8. So this was the output of the FOF. Now we will start working. We will not work with this particular hello catalog because it will have probably 1 or 2 hellos, and it will not make much sense of making an C2 intensity map out of this file. Rather, I will use some existing hello catalog, and all those paths are already set, and I will show you how to do that to make the C2 intensity map.
Sir,
Yeah, what's the problem?
after giving the move command, it is saying try mv dash dash help for more information. That mv
Move
output
command
not-
means, have you typed mv?
Yeah, mv.
mv then space file name.
Yeah.
Have you
Output.
given the file name? Or you can copy the file name from
Yeah.
screen.
I got that output. For my case, it is 8.5. Still, I didn't.
Okay,
change that
okay,
8.5.
fine. So
then
but,
dot slash FOF hello finder
yeah.
slash dot, then enter. Should I press the enter button after FOF slash dot?
Yeah, you have to press the enter button.
So after typing the enter, pressing the enter button, it is saying missing destination file, mv missing destination file operand after.
I think there are extra spaces somewhere in between. So, okay, just type ls in your directory where you are right now. Just
Okay,
type
ls. Yeah.
Can you see the output file still?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so the output file is there. So type mv, then the output file name. Just I am doing at the bottom of the screen. Okay, let me clean the screen. Yeah, let us do a ls. Okay, so let's say mv, this output. I used mouse wheel to copy it just, and then double dot slash FOF, then dot, then enter. It should work. Are you in the nbody directory or FOF directory right now?
Nbody directory.
Yeah, so it should work. FOF hello finder. Okay, first of all, can you do this for me? Other than that, ls double dot. Can you see some results if you do this?
What's the command? ls
double dot slash FOF hello finder slash, the same directory name. So what you should do, double dot slash, just press capital F and then press tab. Probably you were typing the folder name correct, wrong.
There is nothing showing after pressing tab.
Okay, so that means you don't have the FOF hello finder there.
Oh.
It has not been copied properly. So okay, go one level up, cd double dot, just do this and then do ls. What do you see? Do you see the same structure as mine?
cd double dot ls.
cd double space double dot enter.
Okay, then ls enter.
Yes, always you have to, after typing the command, you have to press enter.
Yeah, that's the file showing. allowed setter is inbody.com, inbody.h.
No, it should not show that. You should be in the codes directory. What is it saying
Oh, I'm
before
the
codes?
inbody directory now.
You should not be in the in-body directory in the first place. How means you have copied things wrongly. I'm sorry. If you have copied the structure correctly, then this should not have happened. Okay, you can do a course correction by looking at the recordings later. Okay.
Okay.
Because everything will be visible. See, wherever you are, you can just type pwd. It will tell you exactly your location, present working directory.
Right.
And you should be with pwd, ls, these two commands, you should be using rampantly to identify where you are in a Linux directory structure. Okay, and just before this dollar prompt, there should be the codes right now where we are. So I will go now into the C2 LIM directory within codes directory. So I'm going to the C2 LIM, and this is structured slightly differently than what you have seen earlier. So let us say there is a make file. So if you open the make file or say more to the make file, you will see that there are a bunch of commands, etc. And this one does not require the Fourier transform. All it requires is the path to your hello catalog. Okay. Now we will not be using the hello catalog that you will not be using the hello catalog that you have produced just now, because it is basically too small to give you any kind of useful result. Instead, I will use a hello catalog that I have already uploaded in the workshop directory. So let me see where I am. Yeah, cd workspace storage, then Dheeraj in workshop. Sorry. Data, right. So there are bunch of let's say files in this data directory inside the workshop directory that we have shared with you, and you don't need to copy any of them first of all to your own location. You will be able to read write those files from your own location. You don't need to copy them to your directory. Okay, all we will use is the path to those files for our purpose. So as usual, I will compile this C2 LIM program using my make file. Here, the original C files are kept in this src directory. Okay, so these are mostly C++ programs. And if you open this C2 LUM or let's say main.c file, you will see just a bunch of, it's a very short main.c file. It just opens and ends here. So it's a very short file. It just calls a few functions to read a hello catalog and then produce an output file. That's all. Okay. So let us first compile it. So for compilation, I don't have to be within the source directory. As long as I am in this C2_LIM directory, that should be mine. So for example, in my case, the present working directory should look something like this. Within the codes, I should be within the C2 LIM directory. Okay. And there if I do ls, I can see the make file. All I will do is I will say make. I don't even have to say the main file name or anything, because by default, if you have created a make file and there is a main.c file, it will by default compile that main.c file and all associated C files if you just say make. if you do not specify any compilation command other than that, then okay, in my case, it is saying up to date. So let me remove it. But if you do it, I want to show you how it looks like. So I will remove this thing and I will do make once more. Yeah. So as you can see, it compiled the C2LIM. So there should be a C2_LIM file now created. So if you do make, so if you do make and it says C2LIM is up to date, just do the following: rm-rf C2_LIM, or rm, just rm C2_LIM. It will remove the executable file and then you can just type make. It will compile. It's a single line compilation. Done. And you can now exactly in the same manner, you can run the C2LIM. So now it will ask you certain things. First, it will ask you what is the kind of gridding factor or coarse gridding factor you want for your intensity mapping. So as you remember, for the n-body simulation, we have used a grid spacing of 0.07 MPC in the input file, if you recall that. That was our grid spacing. But obviously, no observation will be seeing the C2 intensity map in that kind of resolution. It will be way more coarser. We will not even go to that coarse gridding, but we will go something coarser compared to 0.07. So I will make the grid 8 times coarser when I produce the C2 intensity map. So the factor, coarse gridding factor, should be 8. Then I will press enter again. Now, whether to implement RSD or not. So within this code, there is an option to basically implement something called redshift space distortions, which I have not discussed actually. It's there in my notes. Once I share with you, you will find it, the relevant calculations, but which I have not discussed during the lecture actually. So for the time being, let's say I don't want it. So I will say no, yes or no. It will ask y or n. Then I will press enter again. Now it says that enter the path of the hello catalog. So I have some big hello catalog kept in this data directory. So I will say p, okay, control L. I will say pwd. So that is the path of the data directory, and inside the data directory, which hello catalog I should pick up. So there is a hello catalog at Redshift 8. So that thing is there. So I can pick up that one. So I will say the path up to data, and then I have to give the file name, exactly which file. So that basically that makes it the entire path to that particular input file. So this code will read in this hello catalog and produce the C2 intensity map after implementing that empirical model from Silva et al., which relates hello mass to C2 luminosity that we discussed today. So now it says enter the output path. Okay, I will say that my output file will have a name C2 map, something like this, C2 map 8.0. And I want it to be produced here in the C2 LIM directory itself. So that's why I'm not giving any path. As long as I give the file name, it will produce the file here, exactly at the local directory where I am right now. And I press enter. So it will run for a few seconds. So I hope these steps are clear to everybody, but these steps will be identical. You should give this particular file name. Okay, you should have access to this file. So copy this path, /home IDs, workspace storage, workshop ISI, Schumann data, then hello catalog 8.000. Because this hello catalog is produced in a much larger volume, something like 250 15 megaparsec or so. And remember, the coarse gridding factor would be 8. And for the time being, I have not implemented the RSD. So once you run the C2 LIM, code, it will actually ask you for all these inputs, and after every input you have to press enter once. So then it will ask you for the next input. So now this thing has run, C2 map, this particular thing has been produced. I have already produced the same C2 map here within my data directory. So now let us plot it. There is no point without plotting it. So if you just again go back to your codes directory, go back one level up, cd space double dot, there will be again this C2 LIM cross C EMU PBK, etc., etc., and there is a plotting directory. So go to that plotting directory. So here you will find quite a few IPython notebooks. Okay, so I will open one of these IPython notebooks. So you can do the same from your left-hand side of the terminal. So you can go to the storage, you can go to, let's say, your username, then persistent. Then there should be, if you have copied the entire Suman directory here, there should be Suman and then codes. If you have just copied the codes directory, just go to the codes directory, nothing else, and go to plotting. Okay, so once you are in the plotting, then open a file called plot c2 map.ipython notebook. Just give me a second, I'll shrink it. Yeah, so plot c2 map IPython notebook, that particular IPython notebook file. Okay, it will come up with something like this. So you can just execute line by line. What we are doing, we are just calling numpy and proplot. Okay, there will be an error here. You will not find proplot here. So what you can do instead, let me just edit this file, and you can do the same edit yourself. Okay, I should have done it before. I'm sorry. So yeah. So the first line should be not this. So create another line and copy whatever content of the first line was to that line. And in the first line, you type this. First is a exclamation mark. Can we zoom in here? Let me see. Increase terminal font size. No, it does not change anything. Python notebook fonts, increase text editor font size. No, that also doesn't change. Jupyter Lab theme, yes, increase code font size. Right, I can increase it more. Code font size. Increase it more. Right, I hope now it is visible slightly better. So what I have done in the first line, I have copied the first line to a second line. I have created another line and just copied stuff there. In the first line, what I am doing is this. First exclamation mark, then pip instln install proplot. So this thing is not by default installed in your directory. So I guess you all know how to run a IPython notebook line. Either you enter shift enter. So it will be executed. While it is being executed, it will show this star here. So it will install proplot. So in my case, it is already there. That's why requirement already satisfied, these lines are coming. But in your case, it will not be there. So it will be installed in your environment location. Okay, so it will be installed in this kind of a path by default. It will take some time. So once one of you have managed to install the proplot in this manner, just let me know.
Yes, sir.
Okay, it worked. So let me see the chat. There is something in the chat. Problem solved now to see column installing. Good. It should install without any hassle. Okay. So if it has been installed for most of us, then we can go to the next line. So I will call numpy as np and proplot as plot. Okay. And I will execute this line again, shift enter, or just press the run button at the top, whatever you prefer. Yeah, it is taking some time to initiate in my case. And then actually do not, for example, change the path of this file, because these are already shared directories. So these things are already there. So don't edit it at all. All you can edit is by changing this 7 to 8 if you wish to. That's all you can do. So what it does, it essentially opens this binary file, and this binary file has a unique structure. At the beginning of the binary file, there are 3 integer values printed. The C2 map is created as a binary file. Sorry, that I should have told at the beginning. It's a binary file, so don't try to open that output file itself that you have just created, or you are using this already existing one that I have kept in the data directory. It contains 3 integers at the beginning, at the header of the file, and these 3 integers represent your grid dimension. So in our case, it will represent basically something like 384, 384, 384, and we will get to know. So that is being read first as a integer, and those 3 numbers are being read as integer, and then they are being printed here. Then what I am doing, I am opening the entire file and reading the entire data, rest of the data as oh, so then there is a grid spacing. Sorry, the cursor grid spacing is given there in terms of this variable L, which is a float variable, float32 variable. So 3 integers representing the grid dimension, then 1 number, float number, which represents the grid spacing, the spacing between 2 grid points, and then the entire data, which is of the dimension of n1 cross n2 cross n3. So it will be a 3D data, right? Each of which will be individual floats. So float 32 again. So that is the size of the data, and that is being read into this data numpy array. And finally, this data numpy array is being reshaped as a row major array structure, because it was written as a row major array in C. So order C means it's a row, you are reshaping the data as a row major array. Means just keep one thing in mind, actually C or Python or any one of these function programs, when this write the data, they don't care whether the data is in 3D or it has 3 dimension, 4 dimension, or n dimensions. It doesn't care. It always writes the data as a single, let's say 1D array. So after it has written the data in a file as a 1D array, when you read it back, it will still be an 1D array of size n1 cross n2 cross n3. So you need to reshape it according to the way it was written. So it was written as a row major array, so I should reshape it as a row major array. So I have to tell Python that kindly reshape the data. And by reshaping, the Python is not doing anything to the data. What it is doing, it is basically changing the way the indices in the data are being called. Okay, how you access different parts of the data, that rule is being changed, nothing else. So that is being done here. And you again enter. So it will tell you what is the dimension of the grid. So the print n1, n2, n3. So that is 384, 384, 384. And the grid spacing L. So 0.56. Yeah, sorry.
After executing that import numpy as np and import proplot as plot, there is showing an error for many of us.
Okay. Did you install proplot?
Yes.
Oh, acha. Now I understand. Because it's a new environment. That's why it is. Okay. What you can do, you can stop the. Yeah. What you should do, just kill the process. Interrupt the kernel. Okay. The proplot was installed correctly, right? There was no error message in proplot installation.
No.
So successfully installed proplot, it has said something like this here. Right. So now, okay, it might happen that this is due to the environment. Okay, fine. So all you can do, you can stop the kernel and interrupt the kernel and then close it altogether. Okay. And then reopen it again. And now in the first line where you are installing the proplot, put a hash so that it becomes a comment. And we will not execute that line anymore. Then start executing from this line. It should go ahead smoothly. Did it work? Are you still seeing some error messages?
Yeah, still the same error message.
What is the error message?
I can copy paste that.
Okay, fine. Yeah, copy paste it in the chat. Let me see. I am unable to see the chats. Okay, okay. Module not found. Trackback import proplot as plot. Okay. Why this is happening? This should not happen actually, because I did the same. Right. Should not be a problem. It should not be a problem, to be honest. I'm surprised. Let me cross check. Okay, what I can do is the following. Let me go to one of my terminals. Right. Then pip uninstall proplot. Right, proceed yes. Good. Then pip install. So what you can do, you can just open a terminal, okay, and if the problem persists, then open a terminal, type pip uninstall proplot in the terminal, and then again after the uninstallation was done, again type pip install proplot in the terminal itself. It should work out. It will take some few minutes to install. Yeah, now it says proplot 0.8.1 was installed. Fine. So I would say suggest basically here in the tab. Okay, here you have this directory icon. If you click on it, you will fine. Yeah, you will see all the files in this particular directory. But if you click on the icon below, you will see all the running terminals. What you should do, first of all, close this Python notebook, and also in the kernel, shut down all kernels. If your problem still exists, do that. This is one of the quick fixes. And then again, go back to this directory file browser icon. Click on that. You will again see the IPython notebook for plot C2 map IPython notebook. Double click on that. It should open up. Now, if you have already done this trick, uninstalling proplot from terminal, pip uninstall proplot, and then pip reinstalling proplot, that is pip install proplot. If you have done these two steps, you don't have to do it again here. So just put a comment, that is hash, in front of the line. So it will comment it out. And then go to this import section and execute it. It takes few seconds and wait until the star becomes 1. So as it becomes 1, that means things are executed. So I want to see if still the problem persists for. Is it working now for everyone? So you have to wait until this.
Now working, sir.
Yeah. until this line is executed, you cannot go to the next line without executing the previous line, unless it recognizes proplot actually. It should work. It should work actually. Means it should work smoothly. And that is the whole point of using SciServer. If it doesn't work, then it's useless. Then, as I said, I already explained the next few lines. So execute them. It will basically read up that particular file. And then you can directly plot. So here I am choosing to plot a particular slice of this data cube. It's a 3D data cube, right? And I can cut it across in a plane perpendicular to any axis, X, Y, or Z, correct? So the data array is a 3D array because I have reshaped it. Each of the indices of the data array runs from 0 to n1 minus 1, 0 to n2 minus 2, n2 minus 1, and 0 to n3 minus 1, up to that number. So 0 to 383, 0 to 383, 0 to 383. That would be the range of indices. So I decided that I would like to plot the 75th slice along the, I will cut the thing in a plane perpendicular to the Z axis. So X and Y plane will be plotted. So what I can do here, I can actually write the entire thing n1 minus 1, 0 to n2 minus 1, and then index. And then essentially I can plot it here, and I can also save it as a file. But right now let us switch off those two things. Even if you don't switch off, it doesn't matter. I'm just, for the sake of argument, I am just showing. So I don't want to save it as a file. I just want to display it, and I execute that particular thing. Okay, so it is showing me some error, and the error is slice indices must be integer. Oh, okay, n1, n2, n3. Oh, unsigned integer it has become. Okay, fine. So I will just write the numerical value. 383, 383. Yeah, so this is how it will look like. And if you want to save it as a file, that also you can do. You can define a file name and the type of file you want to save it as a PNG file or PDF file, whatever. You put the extension accordingly, and then use this savefig function within proplot. So you can execute it again after removing the comments. If you have not put comments, then it has been executed already. So the data is pretty big. That's why it takes time to plot it actually and write the data in that PNG file as well. That's why it is taking, it is still executing, still star. Yeah. So you can also open this file. So you get the file name c2_map.png, right? So you can double click here. It will open this gigantic file in a separate window, which is severely zoomed in. You can download it directly from here with the download option. So if you have plotted something, you can download anytime. Otherwise, now let's say I want to zoom in into a certain region of the data. So I decided that I want to zoom in. So I will not produce the files anymore. I am just going to save some seconds by commenting out these lines, because it takes time to write it in the file. So 0 to, let's say, 50. 0 to 50. So it will then concentrate only in this region. This region of the plot will be zoomed in now, this corner. Yeah, so this is how it will look like. Your C2 intensity map will look like. Okay, so in the same manner, so there is another IPython notebook on the left hand side in the same plotting folder that you can see. There is a H1 map plotting file, plot underscore h1 map IPython notebook. So that is the 21 centimeter map plotting file. So I already have some simulated 21 centimeter data already uploaded here. So let me see whether right, where what is the no, I want to go there. So let me just cross check whether I have the data for Redshift 8 or not. That's all I want to know. C2, no pattern. Okay, H1, I have only Redshift 7. Okay, fine. So let's say in the C2 map, then let us plot Redshift 7 data. So change this Redshift 8 to Redshift 7. So we will read in this Redshift 7. So one and execute it again, execute it here. The plot will look, it will not change much because the halo distribution actually do not change that severely within two redshifts, but it has still changed a bit. So let us keep it the entire range for the time being. So I'm plotting the Redshift 7 C2 map. Already this data is there in the data directory. So I'm not changing anything other than the file name, the Redshift value in the file name. So this is my C2 map. Now let us look at I want to check whether what is the situation in the chat. There are still problems. Worked. Okay, good. Okay, fine. So here also I will do the same exercise. I already have ProPlot installed, so it should not be a problem if the ProPlot has worked in the previous Python notebook. It should work here as well. So first let it execute. Yeah, it has executed. Then let it read the data. So do not change anything in the path of the data file because there is only one Redshift data that is uploaded there. So run it. It will, yeah, it has been executed. So it is also same. The data structure is again identical. There is no difference. And here also I want to plot the full range, 383, 383, right. Oh, I forgot to comment out the file names. It will produce the file. So here also in the same manner, you can produce a figure file. So let us wait for a few seconds. Right. So this is what the 21 centimeter map looks like. Now, okay, let us do something here. So now let us zoom in. So it is 383. So let us make it 100. And I should make this thing also 100. Let us execute it because I want to see this so-called anti-correlation that we were talking about. How, means at least visually, I should see some sort of evidence for that. So I will do the same with this file as well, 0 to 100, because I want to see the same portion of the simulated data in both cases. Nice. So now what my logic says is that wherever this map is ionized, so black regions are ionized regions, right? There the signal is 0. It is in millikelvin. So wherever this map is ionized, my halo should be distributed in that region, right? So the C2 intensity should be high in this region and low in the other regions where it is neutral, right? So let us compare. So I should see a C2 intensity map structure here. There is one such structure actually. So that gives me some hope that there is a chance of some sort of correlation going on. Now this is about simulating the C2 intensity map and then visualizing it and then simulating the 21 centimeter signal and visualizing it. The next step would be to actually calculating the statistics. So the first thing we will do, we will calculate the auto power spectrum of each of these signals. So we have the simulated data in the data directory. the large volume data, let us say, because otherwise the statistics will not make much sense. It will be basically polluted by the sample variance. So again, go back. So let us get into the codes directory that where we are presently at the plotting directory, right? So go one level up, cd double dot. There is something called cross C. So this is the code for calculating power spectrum, cross power spectrum, cross correlation coefficient, everything. So there is a single code which does all of these things for you. So first go to that cross C directory. Again, the structure of this directory is same. If there is a cross power file, you can see, remove it, rm cross power. Okay, within this, because this is the executable file that was produced by compilation by me earlier. So you will not have, let's say, executing write on that file. You need to make or compile your code again. So just type make. Here also there is a main.c file within the src directory, which will call the all other dependent C files. So this code requires the Fourier transform because power spectrum is calculated in the Fourier domain. What we have simulated so far, all of it is in image plane or real plane. So I need to take in the data and Fourier transform it and then calculate power spectrum, auto power spectrum, cross power spectrum, whatever. I need to first do the Fourier transform. That's why I need to access the FFTW3 here. So this code requires FFTW3 installation exactly in the same manner with the same flags as the n-body code. So all of these codes are written with more or less the same philosophy. The underlying philosophies or data structure, etc., are same. So you have done that. So you will have an executable file named cross power. So what you should do, again, /cross power. It doesn't require any input file, but it will ask you for the data file, which data you want to calculate power spectrum for. So if you say cross power spectrum file, so by default, this program is written to calculate cross power spectrum. So it will ask for two different fields. But if you give the same field in two different places while it asks for the fields, it will effectively calculate the auto power spectrum and give you the cross correlation coefficient to be 1 at all k modes, right? That could be a very good cross check. So I will provide it the C2 intensity map that has been simulated by us earlier. So I can actually copy it from here. So in this IPython notebook, this particular path I will pick up. I will copy the entire path within quotes, right? And give it as the first file, first data file, right? Now it will ask for the second data file. Now I want to calculate the auto power spectrum. So I will give the same file name as the second data file as well. Okay. So cross correlation between the same files are effectively autocorrelation, nothing else. So it is now doing the Fourier transform of the data, and then it will basically do the power spectrum. And it will ask you for the output file as well, output file name as well, before it prints the file. Right, now it is asking enter the file name to write the output. So I want to write it as pk underscore C2, that is my C2 power spectrum. And this will be a text file. And at which redshift? These are both redshift 7, so 7.000 dot txt. Because power spectrum is just few numbers, 10 bins or 15 bins, something like that. So this file should be created in this cross C directory itself. Look at it. Yes, it is there. So now you can just use more to see the file because it's a text file. And this is it. So what does it say? It is basically giving you the bin averaged value of the K mode in MPC inverse unit on the first column. Second column, it is telling you that it is a cross power spectrum, but actually it is auto power spectrum because both the files were representing same data, right? Both are C2 intensity maps at redshift 7. So though it says cross power spectrum, it is auto power spectrum, and it can be confirmed by looking at the cross correlation coefficient. So this correlation column is actually the cross correlation coefficient, which is 1 for all of them. And the last column, the fourth column, actually tells you the number of samples in each K-mode bin. So that is the number of K-modes for which this cross power spectrum has been evaluated. So if you want to put an error bar on your power spectrum, and that error bar represents sample variance, then it would be this quantity can be treated as n in the expression of sample variance of 1 by root n. So expression of sample variance will be power spectrum divided by root n, assuming that there is no correlation between different samples. So as you can see, at small K modes, because the number of samples are very low, small K modes are large length scale. That's why the sample variance will be higher there. As you go to the larger K modes, the sample variance will become lower and lower. So this is my C2 auto power spectrum. Okay. Now let us use the same code. I don't need to compile it again because I have compiled once. I can use the same code to calculate 21 centimeter power spectrum, right? So it will ask me for the first file name. Okay, let me kill the program and do it in a clean slate. Cross power. Yeah. So it will ask me for the first file name. Now I will choose, choose my H1 map, right, as my auto power spectrum. Sorry, where it is, right? So H1 map, and then it will ask for the second file name. I will give the same file name so that I get the auto power spectrum. It will do the same thing. Yeah, so now I have to write down this power spectrum output in a file. So I will again say pk. In this case, it will be underscore h1 underscore the redshift value, so that I remember at what redshift this has been done, dot txt. So always give file names in such a way so that they are self-explanatory and you can locate them and understand them very easily. So let us look at this file using more again. So these values now are in millikelvin. Okay, or wait a second. Yeah, they are in millikelvin. Millikelvin, sorry, KQPK. Yeah, millikelvin square actually. Sorry, and the previous one, which was PKC2, was Jansky per radian square whole square. C2, let us say. Yeah, these are in Jansky per radian whole square. So, okay, the interesting fact is that number of samples in each bin will remain same because both of the signals were on the same grid. So the number of samples will remain same for both of the signals. Okay, and now the final thing, we will calculate the same cross power spectrum using the same code, right? So we will just run dot cross power and dot slash cross power, and this time I will give the first file. It doesn't really matter in which order you give the file name. The second file I will give my C2. So the first file was H1 and the second file will be C2, so that I can get my cross power spectrum. Again, doesn't really matter. The order doesn't matter when it is you are dealing with just two fields. Okay, Now I have to write down the output file name. So pk underscore cross underscore C2 cross H1 dot underscore 7 redshift 7 dot txt. So this should give me the cross power spectrum. Now let us look at the cross correlation coefficient. How does it look like? Because we were all eager about that. So see, at very small k modes, let's say 0.078 or 0.136, cross correlation coefficient is close to 1, minus 1, basically close to minus 1. So they are highly anti-correlated, these two fields. As we go to the larger k modes, that is smaller and smaller n scale, they become more and more uncorrelated. Now let us plot all of these data. Okay, so let us go to plotting again. There we have this plot ps IPy notebook. So if you go to the plotting directory and double click on this plot underscore ps dot IPynb, you will get this thing. And actually I have already calculated this auto and cross power spectrum and kept them in the data directory so that we don't mess around, or even if we make mistakes here, we have something to fall back on. So we will plot that particular file. We will not plot the things that we have just created, but it will be identical actually. And you can play around with the things that you will create eventually more. Right, so I executed the first line. Now I'm reading in the cross power spectrum between C2, H1 at redshift 7. So this is how I had initially written the data file name. So next time I have changed. And what I am trying to do, I will open the file. And as we all have seen that the sequence of columns are first K mode, midpoint of the K mode, then the cross power or the auto power spectrum, then the cross correlation coefficient, and then the samples, number of samples, right? So in this case, I am not plotting things with error bar, but that is a home task for you to plot things with error bar. So I will read the data in this sequence, first K mode, then PK, then cross correlation, KOR, COR, and I will gen from text, basically generate from text. So it will skip the header because there is a one-line header here, which is useless. This is for human only. The machine doesn't need to know this particular information. So it will skip that part. It will skip the header 1. It will not skip the footer. And it will use the column 0, 1, and 2 to store the data within this column in K, PK, and COR variables. Okay, that is what will be done here while reading the file. So file will be unpacked and the first line in the header will be skipped, footer will not be skipped, and in this sequence, these columns will be stored in these NumPy arrays. Next, what I want to plot, I remember I told you that we try to plot something called quote unquote dimensionless power spectrum, though these power spectra will have dimension, but still people call them dimensionless power spectrum because from the concept that we had already studied about density fields in cosmology, right? When we plot matter density power spectrum, etc. at that time. So I will do the same. So I will run it. It has read the data and done the necessary calculation. So necessary scaling has been done. So k cube pk divided by 2 pi square has been done on the pk array. And then I am trying to plot the cross power spectrum here. Yeah, so this is the cross power spectrum. X-axis, yeah, as you can see, is in MBC inverse. Now, let's say if it is not a cross power spectrum. So look at something interesting here. What I have done in the Y scale. Sorry, in the Y scale, I have done sim log. because my cross power spectrum, I know already beforehand that it will have negative values. So if I just keep log in the Y scale, it will not be able to plot it. And see, it is saying that it is unable to plot, cannot be. So data has no positive values and therefore cannot be log scaled. So there is something in NumPy which is called symlog. So it is symmetric logarithmic. So it defines essentially, it takes in the negative points or negative values and covers their negative sign. So it takes the whole range, negative to positive, and plot the magnitude of the negative values in log scale with an artificially implemented negative sign in front of them. However, because when you are taking the whole range negative to positive, in this case we are not going into positive, what will happen? You will cross the zero. So how will you define log of zero, etc.? That would be problematic, right? So what it does, it creates a small buffer region around zero where the values will be plotted linearly. So let's say from -1 to +1, values will be plotted linearly, but above +1 things will be logarithmic, below -1 things will be logarithmic. So that is what symlog does. So I have to make it symlog because there are negative values in, and I want to plot it in log scale because the dynamic range is pretty high, right? So this is how the cross correlation power spectrum looks like at redshift 7. Now, if I want to plot instead something else, let's say PKH1, 21 centimeter power spectrum. So I will just replace this thing. Now the 21 centimeter power spectrum or C2 power spectrum, both will be just positive values, right? So I will, execute this thing once more, execute that thing. Now I actually don't need the symlog. But even if I keep symlog, it will not show any error because it will just use the positive portion of the screen. But you can keep log as well. Now, if I want to plot instead, I want to plot the cross correlation coefficient. So that was stored in COR, right? And I don't need log actually here. Actually, if I even cut it out, I think it should work. Let us see what happens. Oh, no, it didn't work. Okay, it didn't work. Fine. So what I can do is the following. I can make it linear. Y scale linear, right? It's not working. Oh, Y formatter is log. That's why it is not working. But it should plot something, right? I have COR, right? Big size 3 by 3, K as a function of 3, correct. Correct. Okay, it is varying between. Okay, Y formatter log. Let us remove that. Let us see what happens. Okay. This is odd. I did it yesterday. Nothing is being plotted. Oh, okay. I'm stupid. I'm plotting the H1 power spectrum. That's why nothing is being plotted. Sorry. I need the cross power spectrum to show you that cross, because everything is one here, so it doesn't make sense. Sorry. So let us plot the cross power spectrum. Right, cross power C2H, and let us try with the default configuration. Oh, acha, I have to read the file once more. I have to execute that line. I have to execute this line. Okay. Therefore, cannot be data have no positive values. Therefore, cannot be. Okay. Symlog. Right. So, okay. Now here you can change the Y formatter. It will not be in log anymore, and it will show you the cross correlation coefficient, etc. So this is how you can look at this power spectrum, cross power spectrum, and you are free to use these codes to estimate cross power spectrum or power spectrum from any data. Now, the only problem that you will face, because this particular data is written in a specific format, and I have already told you what was the format. It was basically first three numbers are essentially three integer values that represents the grid size, and then there is grid spacing. That's all is there. So you can go into the C2 C cross that particular director is cross C. This particular director is main file, src file, and this main.c++ file, and there you will see it is calling a specific function to read the input data file, right? So there you can make necessary changes depending on how your data for which you want to calculate. So because these programs are versatile, they can calculate power spectrum or cross power spectrum from any data. It doesn't have to be C2 or 21 centimeter data. As long as the data is gridded, it will be able to perform that work. But you have to provide the data in a specific format. If you do not provide it in that format, then you have to change the reading function of the data accordingly. Okay, there you will see, for example, it is calling this read underscore data function to read the data files. So you have to edit this read underscore data function accordingly, how your data should be read or supposed to be read accordingly that. And then the rest of the, you don't have to make any changes in the main file actually. You just need to change the reading of that data file, and then rest of the things will take care of itself. So that's it, more or less about this. Now we can, if all of you are not already exhausted enough, I wanted to show there are errors. Cannot find. Yeah, you should not. There are compiling. But why are you getting this compilation error? You should not get it because I think the, let me check, the makefile should have been already, yeah. So I have already edited the makefile and I have included the necessary library files. See, the include directory and the lib directories have been changed already. So it should not give you any error actually. So I'm not sure, Antara, why you are getting this error. I'm sorry, I have not.
Sir,
yeah.
Sir, should we change the path that is in the link, leave that home?
No. Don't change anything.
Okay.
So you should keep the makefile as it is inside this particular code because I have cross-checked it.
Okay.
Okay, what did I change in main.c? I didn't change anything in main.c actually. What I was trying to say that in this particular case, our data is written in a certain way. So as I said to you that the size of the, let's say, the size of the grid is written at the top of the data. 3 integer values are written and then 1 float value is written. Float value is the grid spacing. So if your data is written differently, so there are 2 ways of using this particular code. Either you convert your data in the format that we write the data in binary, or you change the reading function of the data itself. So you can go into this cross underscore power dot. So go to the source file, go to this cross correlate or auxiliary.c file. So one of these files contain this read underscore data function, because this particular function is being called in main.c. So that particular function is responsible for reading the data. So as long as you change it to read your data, the rest of the things will work fine. So that is the benefit of writing each operation as a separate function. Okay. So I think in the auxiliary file, yeah, the read underscore data, this particular function is written, and here you can see that how the data is being read. But your data might be written in different fashion. So there you have to make necessary changes to this particular function. That's all. And then you have to compile again. And so because these are written in C, C++, etc., every time you make change in the source code, I have not made any changes in the source code, by the way. So you have to compile the program again using that make. Okay. Okay, fine. So now if you still have some energy left, I want to demonstrate something very quickly. And for this, I think things should work smoothly without any problem. So all of you can go inside the codes directory. There is this EMU PBK directory. So it's an emulator for emulating the signals at signal 21 centimeter signal from UR essentially for a given reionization model. The purpose of building this emulator is that as I was trying to explain earlier, also that the computation time required to run a simulation is even if it is a semi-numerical simulation, which looks like it runs very fast in few seconds or minutes, but still it is a significant amount of time, simply because of the fact when you would like to do some sort of parameter estimation from an observed, let's say an observed power spectrum or an observed cross power spectrum, you have to write down the likelihood, right, for that power spectrum. So the likelihood will consist of the observed data or observed statistics, that is the power spectrum, and the minus your model data or model power spectrum divided by the sigma or the sigma square, the error in your measurement or error in your model, etc., will come into that sigma, will contribute into that covariance matrix. So while writing that, after writing this likelihood in this fashion or writing the log likelihood in this fashion, what you would like to do for a given model, you would like to allow lots of random walkers to walk in the parameter space. So, and each of these random walkers may take millions of steps, right? So every time a random walker takes a step in the parameter space, you have to essentially evaluate this likelihood or log likelihood, right? So to evaluate that log likelihood, you have to basically generate that model data or model statistic or model power spectrum, whatever you are observing, for that particular value of parameter set where your random walker is standing at that very moment, right? So what does that mean? So if your random walker or the total number of random steps that you have taken in this MCMC analysis or this Bayesian inference, let's say 1 million, you have to run your simulation 1 million times, which is really time consuming and computationally intensive. You would like to reduce that time. So what you can do instead of running the simulation to generate your model data, what you can do instead, you can build a artificial neural network and train the artificial neural network to mimic or basically throw out your model statistics for a given set of parameters. So you have to train this artificial neural network so that with your simulated data, so that it can mimic the model statistics for any other random values within within a set of parameter ranges of the data. So you will replace the simulation in the model with this emulation of the signal statistics, and that is what is being done in this particular package, which was developed by a master student at IIT Indore, an MSc student at IIT Indore. So I will briefly discuss this. Again, there are significant amount of documentation available on this particular package, and there is also a paper out based on this particular package, so you can look at them, and if you find any difficulties, etc., you can directly contact either me or this particular student, whose name is Himanshu Tiwari. So it is available in GitHub, and you can actually install it as a Python package. So we will just do a brief demonstration. Even if you are unable to, let's say, follow it with me at this moment, don't worry. So all of the necessary things that are required to demonstrate, to use this package are installed in the first few lines. I am not going to run them because that takes a significant amount of time, and we are kind of short of time right now. So I will just give you a demo. Don't worry, you have the Python notebook here. You can run it yourself. So all you have to do, you have to remove these comments at the beginning of these installation lines, okay, and run them one by one, and make sure that everything is installed properly. Okay, so right now this version of this particular package is not made available in GitHub, but he will release it soon. But you can call it from by mentioning the version here, so you can install it. There is no problem. Basically, some of the documentation are being updated right now. Okay, so just to what I said, and just to give you a brief outline, what it will do, for example, this is the 21 centimeter signal power spectrum that we were simulating few minutes ago. So these points are actually the simulation points, and the line is the predicted power spectrum by the trained artificial neural network. So that is the emulated power spectrum. So we will see how accurately it can, means here it looks, visually it looks quite accurate, but one has to quantify it, obviously. So we will do that eventually. So let us say first, as these things are already installed, I am not running them. What I am going to do is I'm going to call this EMU PBK. So first thing is you have to install EMU PBK. That is the package that he has developed. And I will call the ANN, and there is a significant amount of data set, which is also made available publicly, the simulated data set, simulated power spectrum data set. And I will divide that data set into training set and test set. So most of it will be part of the training set, and a few will be randomly chosen to test the trained ANN emulator. So that's what I'm going to do. So let us see how it goes. It's taking, okay, it is just calling PBK. Okay, it's taking a significant amount of time. Done. Fine. So next, what I'm going to do, I'm going to clone the entire data set that is there already. So I have already done this cloning, so it will show me some error message that the directory already exists, so it will not clone the data. Yeah, fatal destination path data already exists, so I have already cloned the data, that's why. So this data directory contains all the simulated power spectrum, which will be used as training as well as the test set. Okay. Now I can just do an ls here and see what are the things here. So mostly it will be the data directory and few other things which will be produced as well in the eventual way of things. So what I will do within this data, there is power spectrum data, and I have essentially a, large set of power spectrum simulated in the parameter space, and I can show you what kind of sampling has been done. Let me just open. Sorry. Change author. Right, this one. So right. So what we have done here is the following. So I have three main parameters for my reionization model. As I was discussing earlier, minimum halo mass, then ionizing efficiency, or ionizing photon production efficiency, or ionizing ionization efficiency of the photons, let's say, whatever way you might want to see it in ion, and then mean free path of the ionizing photons. So what we have done here is the following. We have essentially sampled this parameter space randomly using 550 samples. And then out of those 550 samples, we have separated out, again, randomly, few samples that are shown here with color as test sets. The rest of the samples kept here are my training set. They constitute my training set. So I have simulated the signal for all of these points, okay, and then trained my emulator based on the power spectrum that has been simulated for these sets of values of parameters. Okay, so that is precisely what we will do. So this simulation part is already done, and that is the simulated power spectrum data we have downloaded from JIT, from the database, and now we are reading it. And once I read it, it tells me that I have 523 samples with each data has 7 power spectrum values for 7 K modes. So we have chosen 7 K modes based on, let's say, the feasibility of detection of the signal in those K modes. And then I am randomizing this sample, 523 sample, and choosing, let's say, 15 or 10 samples out of it. First I am randomizing the data, and then so that the data does not come as a basically in a streamlined or in an orderly fashion. And then I am defining that I am choosing 20 samples out of it as my test sample. So out of 523, I am separating out 20, and 503 will be used, or 504 will be used for my training set. So that is what is being done. I can cross-check all the test set and training set again, and those are the dimensions. Now I will call my ANN for training, right? And then I will essentially run or train the ANN for 1000 epochs with this 503 data sets. So it will take some time now. Yeah. But let us go through it, and then I can show you the accuracy of the training and all that. And then we can do a very short, let's say, MCMC analysis, very short, just for demonstration. So this entire notebook is there. So you can actually, and if you are interested, this was done for only one reionization model, and that's also for one redshift, because again, that building the training set takes quite a lot of time, because that involves simulating the signal at for 523 sets of parameter values. So if you want, you can develop it further. You can basically try to develop a equivalent training set or equivalent ANN emulator for cross power spectrum or something else, any kind of statistics, so as to say. You can do it for C2 intensity mapping as well. So this is just the beginning, and you can push it forward as much as you want. Okay, it is taking ages, my God. Now, 7 seconds, 10 seconds. Did I do a mistake by running it for 1000 epochs? Okay, let us kill it. I don't want to run it for 1000 epochs. Stop. Did it die? It has died. So let us run it for 100 epochs. Let's say, right. That I can tolerate. So obviously the training will be bad. If I reduce the number of epochs for training, it will be bad. And I have also set some sort of threshold accuracy level, that to be 0.99, otherwise it will not be accepted. It will keep on iterating. Okay, for the time being when it is going on, I think probably most of you are aware of probably how these artificial neural networks are used for emulating or predicting any kind of signal. So essentially, there will be a certain number of input layers, and these input layers will depend on two factors. First of all, how many data points are there for any kind of statistics that you are trying to emulate. So in our case, we are using power spectrum for 7K modes. On top of that, there are 3 parameters for our reionization model, right? So we have M hello minimum, NION, and RMFP. So for each set of values of M hello minimum, NION, and RMFP, there should be one set of power spectra. So the input layer will be consisting of the construction of input layer will be based on this dimension 3 plus 7. And similarly, what we would like to get as output, in the output, I would like to get back just the 7 power spectrum value, so power spectrum valued at 7K modes. So that would define the last output layer. Now, depending on the level of accuracy that I want to achieve, I will have several hidden layers in between. So that's how you will build the architecture. And then, okay, here as an example, you can see that the power spectrum has been simulated. So simulation points are these circles and the emulations are these lines. So it looks quite accurate, but the best thing to look at is the accuracy and loss rate after. So see why we need to run it for 1000 epochs or so, because the level of accuracy actually improves only after something like 200 or 300 epochs. Then it becomes more or less acceptable. The less than 10% error will be there, and the loss rate also has to go down. So it also goes down after 200 or 300 epochs. So the 100 epochs thing that we are going to do will not produce a very good emulation. And then the next, okay, this is unrelated. I don't want to confuse you with additional information. Rather, we can go back here to see some of the things. Right. Right. So here are, I think, some MCMC constraint parameters using the power spectrum and etc. How do you reduce such an open image in a new tab? Right. So if I look at only in this brown colored circles, so these constraints were obtained only using power spectrum as the statistics. Okay. And where the emulator has been used instead of the simulation to do the MCMC analysis. So the likelihood values were evaluated, log likelihoods were calculated based on this emulated model power spectrum, not the simulated ones. So as you can see, the emulation actually works quite well even here for the modeling purpose, and it gives you reasonable constraint. And the other error bars or other error contours, other colors were produced using a different statistics called pi spectrum. And I'm not going in there because I have not discussed it earlier. So that is more or less the end goal for any kind of observation or any kind of observational cosmology that you would like to do. You would like to constrain the parameters of your model at the end of the day, whether it is cosmological model parameters or it is, let's say in this case, reionization model parameter. Depending on your science goal, you will basically define that. So our Jupyter notebook is still running, and surprisingly, it is taking longer than usual, which is really unusual. Okay, so if it had run properly, then let's say if you have taken 1,000 epochs, etc., then this would be your accuracy or loss rate. And you can also eventually, within using this notebook, you can also plot your ANN prediction as well as the simulated data. As you can see, that depending on how many epochs you are choosing to train the ANN for, the accuracy here, it doesn't look that well because they have all circles were sometimes shifted towards the bottom side of the line. That's simply because of the fact I didn't run it for enough number of epochs. And then there is, it actually calls, I think Dhiraj has already introduced you to these things. So it essentially calls Cosmo Hammer via EMC to do the MCMC part. So it uses a Metropolis Hastings algorithm to do the random walk in this 3D parameter space. Here only 3 parameters are there. And yeah, as I was saying, it calls Cosmo Hammer, and then you run it for sufficiently long time. Acha, I had interrupted it, but what you will get eventually is these kind of constraint parameters, because I have not run it for sufficiently long number of steps. So that's why the parameters were not well constrained. So more or less, this is what I plan to cover. So I would suggest you basically run this notebook all by yourself. More or less, it is self-explanatory. If you need any documentation or related help, you can either contact me or actually look at the GitHub page first. There is a fair bit of documentation kept here. And you can also look at our paper, and either you can contact me or Himanshu. His email ID, I think, should be available somewhere here in the GitHub page. Yeah. So I will share all of these links with you, and yeah, that's all. If you have any other question related to, let's say, related to the calculation of power spectrum, cross power spectrum, etc., you can ask. No. Yeah, it is better to take questions rather than just speaking continuously. You can unmute yourself and ask. So,
sir, in the
yeah, please.
Sir, in the posterior plot, why the ionizing efficiency is high, like 89 or so?
Posterior, posterior plot. Are you talking about the, oh, here, in this plot you are talking about?
Yes, yes.
Okay, acha. I think this one was not constrained properly because I stopped the thing altogether. So yeah, this is not constrained, though it is quoting these values, as you can see clearly. You can claim there are lots of, let's say, 95% confidence intervals here. So why should I choose this particular point? Or yeah, okay. So I think your question is why my original input anion value is quite high. That is what you are
Yes.
asking?
Yes.
Okay, that I think because I think this was chosen randomly from one of the test sets. So I didn't have any control because the test set was randomized. So first as I explained, we simulated the 523 points in the parameter space, and then we separated out them in training set and test sets. And out of the test set, we also separated out few to basically as if they are the observational power spectrum, because they are coming from directly from the simulation. So we are considering for the time being that in observation also we will see something similar as our observed data. And then we were trying to ask the emulator whether what is the means to replace the model, and then we were trying to constrain the thing based on that. So these choice of these parameters were randomized while choosing these values, but I can show you the actual data which was chat, and yeah, you can close the chat. Yeah, which we had presented here. So okay, so it depends on here also the anion values are quite high. Actual input anion values are quite high. It depends on basically what we found out is that if I keep our anion value low, let us see whether we have one such set. Yes, we do have one such set here. So set 3 actually has lower anion values. Yes. So if we keep our anion values low, then what is happening, and if we keep our minimum halo mass also kind of lower, what is happening basically, if you look at our training set here, the sample at this low anion value and low m halo minimum kind of region is very low. So this will lead to lower neutral fraction at a certain redshift compared to if I choose anion high. Yeah, if I choose anion high and m halo minimum low, that kind of set, and RMFP very high, that will lead to very high, very low neutral fraction, and this will lead to very high neutral fraction, right? It will lead to very high neutral fraction. So that will in turn basically there are not enough, let's say, samples for low neutral fraction sets. So these colors actually represent the neutral fraction of those sets. So YOLO means high, and any other value actually, let's say this dark purple or dark blue represents low neutral fraction. And as you can see, the number of training sets for this region is significantly low, and the power spectrum's shape, etc., changes significantly at these ends compared to the other end. So what happens is that if your let's say training set itself is quite small for this kind of region, the emulator will not predict the signal or will not predict the simulated signal correctly, because it doesn't have enough training set. So what we need to do is we need to produce more training set in this region. That is what we found out. And if you choose one point from this region as your observation and try to constrain it, you will not be able to put better constraint, simply because of the fact that your emulator is not well trained in that region. And we are restricted in sampling this particular low neutral fraction regime of the parameter space, simply because of the fact that we are restricted by the minimum halo mass. We cannot go below 10 to the power 9 MSEN. So if we can manage to go below 10 to the power 9 MSEN, let's say 10 to the power 6 or 10 to the power 7 even, then we will have enough number of samples in this region as well. And that will actually better train our emulator, and that will then help us in constraining the parameters from, let's say, observational points from this region. So that's why one demonstration we have shown for high value of this anion, etc., etc., and one set we have chosen for one low value of anion. For example, this one, it is still not that low actually. It is still quite high, 45 or something like that. So here we can see that it kind of constrains the power spectrum to some extent, constrains the anion, but still have a significant amount of error bar. And this is happening simply because of the fact the emulator is not performing well. That's why the errors in the estimate are quite high in this region.
Okay, sir, understood. Okay, so
Sir,
yeah, please go ahead.
yes, sir. Will you share the class notes and tutorials?
Yeah,
of
yeah,
yesterday
everything.
and
So what I am doing is I generally keep everything in a Google Drive. So Google Drive directory, and I will create a link to that directory and post it either in the Slack, or I can, yeah, I will post it in the Slack. So
yes, sir,
everybody
you
can,
can post it on the Slack and we will
yeah, that is
have the
easier
access.
for everyone. Yeah, I will post it in the Slack.
Yes,
There
sir.
will be a single link from where you can download all the notes and all the slides. Are there any
Yes.
further questions? Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay,
See,
so
I am
comments?
unable to open the chat box for some reason. Now I have found it. Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. This particular part of the session requires, yeah, a bit more time, and I had to rush through it. But I hope, as the notebooks are there, they are quite self-explanatory. So you can go through them, and if you find any difficulty, just contact me. My email address is there in the slide as well.
Okay, so someone says in the chat box, thanks for the nice session, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Sorry, it was kind of haphazard. I didn't manage to do everything as I wanted to do. I'm sorry. I am always underprepared.
It was really excellent session. I mean, for me at least. I mean,
Okay. Thank you.
so okay, so if there is no more questions or comments, then on behalf of the organizing committee, as well as on behalf of the Technology Innovation Hub of Indian Statistical Institute, let's thank Professor Suman Majumdar once again for 4 wonderful lectures and hands-on sessions on 21 centimeter cosmology. Of course, we understand that some more time would have been much better for us, but we need to keep ourselves restricted due to this time constraint. So we do hope that we'll be able to interact further in future, both the students as well as the faculty members and Professor Majumdar as well.